set. Let's get into it because this is going to be a long talk. Actually, some of the parks you can blow into, and maybe in an afternoon do the park, see the park. Some of the ones we're visiting today need a little bit more time. So we'll start at Great Basin. Great Basin, probably one of the least visited parks in the system. It's if you hit Salt Lake and you're heading west, books on tape are good. You have let's see if they have. Oops. You've got high Columbia Plateau up above. Down below, the Colorado Plateau is a high. The Wasatch on the east and the Sierra Nevadas on the west. In between, you've got the big bowl. And I say big, you're looking at, these aren't acres, that's 209,000 square miles. So like I said, and there are not a lot of off ramps, not a lot of billboards, towns or anything. If you're heading west, this is the big empty that you're going through. What's important for us is that it's a basin that's called that because there are no outlets. Any precipitation that falls in this area, be it snow or rain or whatever, there are no outlets either draining to the Pacific or down to the Gulf of Mexico. Whatever falls there sinks in. So hence the name basin. The park itself, as a lot of over half of the current 63 national parks got their start initially as another unit designation under the Park Service, and they got promoted, kicked upstairs, normally for expansion purposes or some just because of popularity, got promoted to national parks. This is the same thing. It began its existence as Lehman Caves National Monument. It was a very unfortunate reasoning for the promotion to national park. In 1964, we had a climate scientist. He wanted to explore the oldest living thing on Earth was a bristlecone pine by the name of Prometheus, 5,000 years old. He wanted to see exactly how old it was. And the methodology is you take a core sample, you drill into the tree, you take out the core sample, you count the annual rings, and that's how old it is. Well, he broke his bit off and he drilled a second hole, and long story short, he killed the oldest living thing on Earth. At the time, the grove of bristlecone pines that Prometheus was growing in was not within the protected area of the national monument. So it got expanded into a national park, added so that this wouldn't happen again. The grove of bristlecones, these are alive. They don't really look it, but they're just, it's a fantastic experience to go look around them. Very unique species, and you're going to hear this more than once today. They don't grow anywhere else in the world. If you want to see bristlecone pines, you come here. They only grow between basically 6,000 and 11,000 feet elevation. That's their sweet spot. And look at the growing conditions favored by bristlecone pines. Cold temperatures, very dry soil, high winds, and a short growing season. Note the lack of anything else growing next to it. No other plants like those growing conditions, so it's got the place to itself. You don't have to fight through bullbriars to go see the bristlecone pines. There's nothing else there. They are a unique species. And I'm sorry, I don't know what else was going on 5,000 years ago to say, oh, and it was when the pyramids were being built or whatever. 5,000 years ago, when these guys were seedlings, was a long time ago. You can still tour the caves. There are several caves in the limestone that makes up the area. Lehman is the only one still commercially available. Some pretty good formations, stalactites and stalagmites and stuff. It's nothing that's going to make you forget Carlsbad if you've been there. It's not on that scale. Actually, hard hats are good. You got a low roof at points, but you can still tour the cave. The high point, so to speak, is Wheeler Peak in the park. It's a 13,000 footer above the glacial cirque. That gets kind of an asterisk. This is the north face of Wheeler Peak. I was there in August, so that's what's left of the glacier there. By definition, a glacier gets more snow accumulated during the winter months than dissipates and melts away during the July and August. So the snow has to stay year round. Well, this is kind of the runt of the glaciers, but it does satisfy the definition. So it's a glacier. You don't want to hold it up comparison wise to its Alaskan cousins, but there's the only glacier in Nevada. So this is a fun hike. There's a ridge line there to the right that gets you up to the top. It's a little over 3 mile hike. So you're talking six mile round trip, but the guidebook that you get there in the visitor center warns you of three dangers. Number one, you're starting at a trailhead about 9,000 feet elevation, and within 3 miles you're going up to 13,000. So this is not the day one hike. If you just blew into town, you don't want to do this your first day because your body hasn't acclimatized yet. You're gonna get some headaches. You're gonna have altitude sickness is an issue. It's also spectacularly exposed. You're up on the ridge line and you can count on the afternoon storms. Just weather-wise, they come in every afternoon and it's going to be there, and some of them have lightning. You are the lightning rod. You are the high point when you're up on that ridge. So you got to be aware of that. And it happens to be dry and desert area, so there are rattlesnakes in the area. Rattlesnakes, lightning, and altitude sickness. Other than that, it's a great hike. I went up, so there's the ridge that you carry along to get up to the top. You get a pretty good view from up there, looking down at the bristle cones. A concerted lack of any man-made lighting. There are no towns anywhere near the area. It's in the middle of nowhere. The upside of that is that at night, it's an international dark sky park. There is no man-made light that pollutes. So what you see, the viewing opportunities are amazing. You can see stuff with the bare eye that would normally, they dropped this out of the sky. This is from 5 years ago. It's now the only national park that has an observatory and a scientific made, which is kind of creepy because it's remote controlled. So if you're out there, all of a sudden the hinges start opening up and the telescope comes out and there's no one in the area. But as a result, the sky, you're up high, you're at almost 13,000 feet. So there's less atmospheric interference, no humidity at all, very clear sky. Those aren't clouds, that's the Milky Way that you're looking at. So good night sky. And the combination of I don't want to get too new agey on you, but a 5,000-year-old growing thing next to you combined with the gazillion stars that you can see, it's a very cool place to camp out and very memorable scenery. So that's Great Basin. Now we're going to go over to the left side of the Central Valley in California to the Pinnacles. Pinnacles is essentially just east of Big Sur, Monterey area, Pebble Beach, down south from San Jose. It sits, this was initially said, Teddy was interested in this. I don't know why. It's a volcanic area. It's not like it needed protection. It's out in the middle of nowhere and nobody was building building up the area around it, but he set it aside as a national monument. When it got reclassified and expanded, it expanded more than tenfold. It went from 2,000 acres to 27,000, which sounds like a lot, but again, everything's relative. If you go up to the 8 Alaskan parks, Kenai Fjords is the smallest of the Alaskan parks. It's 670,000 acres. This one's 27,000. So amongst its peers, it's puny. It does, however, sit on the San Andreas Fault. San Andreas is the Pacific plate, tectonic plate, banging into the North American plate. It subducts under. That causes leaks, if you will, and the magma can come up. That's what the San Andreas is. Pinnacles is on the Pacific side of it. It's actually half of an old volcano that's shifting along the fault at about 2 inches a year. That's the San Andreas. The other half of the volcano is 200 miles to the southeast. So it's been there for a while. Like I said, there's nothing else going on in the area. And this isn't on the way to somewhere. This is a destination park. That's what you're looking at, the volcanic spires. The map of the park itself, there are no roads that go east to west through the park. There, you can come down from San Jose and enter from the east entrance, or you can come over from the west into west entrance. There are hiking trails that you can hike through the park up and over the Pinnacles, but there's no driving. So you got to pick what side of the park you want to see. That's why there's no roads in the area. That's what it looks like. Very fun. I was down there in August or in last June. It was 107 degrees. They had a very hot spell last June, and I was hiking by myself. And what I usually do is check in with the rangers to let them know what trail I'm going to be hiking on and when I expect to be back, because if I turn an ankle or something, I'm by myself. And find me. Well, we had a rather lively discussion. The ranger who would be charged with coming to find me if I didn't return was strongly suggesting that maybe it's 107 here. You're going up to the volcanic Pinnacles. It's going to be 117, 120 degrees in the direct sunlight. Maybe you should hike along the cottonwoods, along the stream in the shade for today. I politely explained I didn't fly from Boston to come see cottonwoods. I want to go up into the Pinnacles. So I ended up choosing a different route to get up there that's a little less exposed. So I'm hiking up and I pass on the side of the trail this tree that looked to me like somebody had used it for target practice. There were holes, riddled holes, but the closer I looked, there were nuts stuck in the holes. There were acorns in there, which I found rather amusing. It turns out that there's a species of woodpecker there, the Acorn Woodpeckers. They set up one in the area as it's basically their silo, their granary tree where they store. They can have up to 50,000 holes in one tree. They're meticulous. They pick out the exact diameter hole, then they go pick up an acorn and plug it in there, and that's their food supply. I had never seen one before, so it's a unique experience. This is the trail that you hike up. They give you some railings to help get up the steeper sections of the Pinnacles. And these are not vultures. These are California condors, which are absolutely fantastic. If you look there, they have numbers painted on them. California condors actually were extinct in the wild. They were gone. They had some breeding pairs down in the San Diego Wildlife Park, and they brought them back. There are now, this is one of 3 sanctuaries where they're releasing condors into the wild. They do it in Grand Canyon and down in Zion as well. But if you want to see California condors, this is the place to come. And that was my purpose for going there, to get up top to see if I could find some. they're fairly successful. They're up to about 500 of them now where there were none. So they are breeding. Absolutely a completely unique experience to my van isn't 10 feet long. The wingspan on these, it's the largest raptor in North America. A 10-foot wingspan. If you're hiking up, there's no shade up on the Pinnacles, and all of a sudden the sun gets blotted out. You look up and you've got this, they do look like vultures, this enormous creature. I had the great fortune to watch. I watched one for over 20 minutes. He never once in 20 minutes flapped his wings. It was so hot that day that the thermals were rising up, the hot air was going up. He would just hold into a pattern and ride the rising hot waves 20, 25 minutes, never flapped his wings. It's kind of a fun wildlife sighting. Well, this is where I was going up to, the volcanic spires, very popular with rock climbers, either climbing or rappelling. One of the wildlife sightings that you can see are moths. I didn't even know there were 500 species of moths in existence. This is within the boundaries of the park. There are 500 designated or identified species. And they also have about 70 different types of butterflies. Well, the combination of all these winged insects pollinating wildflowers, I'm sorry, not wildfires, wildflowers, means that if you go in April, the whole we have our foliage in the fall where Mother Nature lays the carpet over the deciduous trees changing color. Well, out there, it's in the springtime and it's the wildflowers that just go crazy. So now you've got sources of pollen. It leads to the highest diversity of any place on Earth for bees. There are over 400 species of bees in the park. You got to be pretty darn good to be able to discern the differences. This is part of a display. They have a nature center there adjacent to the visitor center. Somebody very, very good had pinned all of the different types of bees and identified them. So if you're into that kind of stuff, this is bugs are us. Go to Pinnacles. You can hike around there. They've got, they label them as caves. They're not really caves. They're just, the pinnacles go up, erosion makes the tops, if there's a crack and the water gets in there, eventually the top breaks off. It's called a talus, scree. It wedges in between when the pinnacles get narrow. So you've got a top on a cave, but it's not really solid. So you can climb around in there. Yeah, there are low ceilings, but you can usually see the sunlight up ahead. So it's not an enclosed cave. But they do have bats. The bats will nest in there. This is one of the gates. If the bats are mating, they don't want humans in there, so they'll close the gate to give the bats some privacy. There are 14 different species. It's not of the numbers like that Carlsbad has that come flying out at night to go hunting. They're lower in numbers. This is the long-eared bat. You do have other small mammals in the area that, well, larger mammals keeping the small rodent population. If you look closely, he's got a squirrel in his mouth there. Normally the bobcats are nocturnal and you're not gonna see them. That's your money shot if you go to Pinnacles, is to see the California condors. So it depends on where you are as to where your sunset shots are. We'll move right along to the Sierra Nevadas. Now, Yosemite deserves, in my estimation, its own hour-long program. There's an awful lot to see in Yosemite. I'll go through fast, but it's due east of San Francisco. So it's over on the east side, which is in the Sierra Nevadas. It's a pretty good sized park. one of the most visited, I think it's third or fourth most visited park in the entire system. I will guarantee you that not a proportionate amount of the 4 million visitors are there in January and February. So if you show up in the middle of the summer, you're going to have company, and everyone goes to the valley. If you come in Route 40 from San Francisco, you come through the Wawona Tunnel and you're going to see the valley. The valley is a mile wide and 7 miles long. It runs from west to east, 7 miles. It's only a mile across. By no means skip the valley. You have to go there. It's deserving of its reputation. However, it represents only 3% of Yosemite National Park. There's an awful lot more to see. If you go up to the high country, there's Tioga Road. Well, you could drive all the way up there. That's at 10,000 feet. The entrance down at El Portal there is about 6,000. So you don't have to hike to climb. You can drive up, but Hetchy is accessible. That's the Tuolumne River. The Merced River carved the valley, Yosemite Valley. Tuolumne River carved Hetchy, we'll get to. This is your view as you come through the Wawona Tunnel. There's a big parking area there, and you can get out and your jaw will drop. You go from the left side, which is the north rim. El Cap is closest to you. So the west end of the valley, anchored by El Capitan, the largest granite face anywhere on the face of the earth. To off in the distance there, Half Dome is on the south rim at the east end. So those are the bookends of two of the, then you got Bridal Veil and the Cathedral Rocks and just magnificent things.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Would you mind helping the people on Zoom if their cameras are on and it's a little awkward sometimes? I think they can hear you.
The request is your cameras on?
Yeah, the people on Zoom turn their cameras off.
Oh, I see. If you can, if you're on Zoom, if you can turn your cameras off, it's a little distracting to us. I think there's a setting here, but I'm not going to play around with it where I can be the only one visible. If I knew more about the sharing, I could.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. No, I see it as well. All right. You can. They are muted. I don't know if you can. Yeah, you can turn your cameras off, I guess. All right, Galen Clark. Galen Clark's a cool name. My wife's maiden name is Clark, and our youngest of our 3 boys is named Galen. So we brought the kiddies out there and had to go see Galen. How's that for a location for your cabin? It's nestled down in the Mariposa Grove. He was the first European. He didn't really discover the Grove. There were indigenous Indians living there. They brought him in there and shazam, he liked the place. He was the one that got, now this is 1964. He goes and he's tugging on Abe Lincoln's coattail saying, hey, I got an important piece of business to talk to. Like Lincoln didn't have anything else going on in 1864. He said, I want you to save this area. Galen Clark was concerned about commercialization. He didn't want this area to turn into another Niagara Falls. So he wanted protection. The term national park had yet to be coined, but this was the first public lands that in fact were set aside and conserved for public use. He stayed there for 24 years to be the guardian of the valley. He headed off and again, could talk for a long time about Frederick Olmsted. He was the father of American landscape architecture. The guy was amazing in turning public lands over to magnificent displays of nature. They gave him a bunch of pigsties and swamp, 1,000 acres outside of Manhattan and said, make something of this. And he turned it into Central Park. If you do something well, you get tagged again. In the mid 1800s, all the universities and colleges were starting up. Wesleyan, Smith College, West Point, Stanford. He designed the grounds for all of these old established institutions. If you've ever been to North Carolina up in Asheville, the Biltmore Estate, he designed the grounds for not the castle, but the grounds were his. The green parks surrounding Boston, the Emerald Necklace was his design. He was awesome. So he was in charge of, again, blocking commercialization in Yosemite. When he left to go head back east and do some work, who comes in but John Muir? So now you're talking the guy that initially was running a sawmill in the valley. He was enamored. He fell under the charms of Yosemite and he ended up the spearhead, the sharp end of the point for the conservation movement in America. He started the Sierra Club. He was the one that took Teddy. There's John Muir, there's Teddy Roosevelt, insisted that Teddy come visit. This is at the base of one of the sequoias in the there's over 500 of them in Mariposa Grove. This is one. He brought Ted up to Ted, my good buddy Ted, up to the Glacier Point, which is about 3,000 feet up above the valley, and camped him up there. It snowed. They were covered with snow. They were sleeping under the stars. Teddy liked that kind of stuff, and basically Muir convinced him that there's no possible way that man is going to improve on what nature has created here. It needs to be set aside. It needs to be protected. And it was successful. There's Glacier Point. You're looking straight on the south rim, Glacier Point, you can drive up to. So you're up 3,000 feet above. Looking directly across at the north rim, you've got upper, middle, and lower Yosemite Falls at 2,400 feet, the tallest waterfall anywhere in North America. You can go to any of these parks and drop your jaw in wonder at the magnificent scenery. My personal opinion, if you do a little homework ahead of time and know a little bit more about how it came to be, in my opinion, it enhances your view of your appreciation level of what you're looking at. So quick geology 101. I mentioned the plates, the Pacific plate subluxing under the North American. That creates basically balloons underground, about 6 miles under. They're not filled with air, they're filled with liquid magma. And the pressure of the receding Pacific plate forces them upwards very slowly, which gives them a chance to cool. They're called Plutons, these balloons. And when they end up above, that's where the granite comes from. A collection of them is called a batholith. So the entire Sierra Nevada range is called the Sierra Nevada batholith. It's got all these giant globes of granite that have come up from below. So when you're looking from Glacier Point at the High Sierras, that's what you're looking at, are Plutons. This is one that my kids, they were 3rd grade to 7th grade, good age to bring kids to parks. They weren't in Snugglies, or I didn't have to push them in a stroller. They could get around, but they were still at the point where they'd go where I told them to go. They saw Sentinel Dome. Sentinel Dome is also on the south rim. It looms about 1,600 feet above Glacier Point, so they wanted to go to the high point. Well, there's a path that goes up there. Look at the day. This was last June. I went back up there. Look at the day I had to look. Now, normally in June, and it's very dependent upon the snowpack that you get, the waterfalls in the park are roaring. This was last June, and you can barely make out the Yosemite Falls. This was later in the summer in August, but it was 98. They had more snow that year. So even in the end of the summer, there's my 3 sons. When a pose that their mother was a little bit nervous of, because dad kept saying, just back up a little further and I can get a good shot. You know, they were sitting on the edge of a 4,800 foot drop down to the valley. But it did make a nice picture. If you turn to the east from Glacier Point, you can see Vernal down below in Nevada Falls. That's the Merced River coming down from up above. It's melted glaciers. That's how it gets down to the valley floor. So you got two there, and you can climb up there. It's a 3.5 mile hike up to the top of Nevada. The first section of which brings you to the top of Vernal Falls. This is called the Mist Trail. It's my wife and kids going up in August, and literally you get bathed. There's the trail over here, but there's no pool at the bottom of the fall. It smashes on rocks. So the mist is constantly flying. It's a wonderful, if you don't mind the slippery underfoot of the rocks being bathed, it does also bathe you. So the Mist Trail is very refreshing hike in the summer. That's the top 320 feet is essentially double the height of Niagara. Nowhere near the volume of water that's going over Niagara Falls, but Niagara Falls is 167 feet. This is 320. In between the two, Nevada is up top and Vernal is down below. The middle section is called the Silver Apron. It's 92-foot section where the Merced pours down through these sluices and then goes over granite down into the Emerald Pool. It's a little tricky. It's extremely cold water. It's melted snow. You can easily jam a foot down in a crevasse down below and get trapped. And the current is not gentle, it's rushing. So it's not the best place to swim. But if you have an adventurous spark and you see this current sliding over the smooth granite, dumping into the pool down below, very difficult to resist. Many an afternoon, I used to live out in California, so every weekend, that's me sliding down the Silver Apron into the pool. The challenge is that it's not a stagnant pool. You've got the current whipping around the corner, and then it drops 300 feet over the edge of Vernal Falls. So you have to get out before you go around the corner. And there's algae on the rocks. There's no good handholds or anything. So adrenaline is a very powerful drug. It kicks in and you scramble and you get out. So if you're a strong enough swimmer, this is a fun activity. Unfortunately, so many people did not make it out of the pool. They come around the corner and drop. In the late 90s, over 6 people died going over the edge. So that's now verboten. You can't go do that anymore. Like a lot of the fun stuff we used to, back in the day, hate sounding like an old guy, but used to be able to do it. But that's what you went over. And that's what you landed on. So not fun. Keep hiking up the Mist Trail and you get to Nevada. Nevada's twice the size. It's a 600-foot waterfall. And to come around back to the west to get back down the valley, you go down the John Muir Trail, which gives just spectacular views looking back at Liberty Cap and Mount Broderick, the Plutonic domes, granite domes, great views of the waterfall and stuff. So it's no shortage of great photo ops there. So now we'll go over to the North Rim. At the west end, you've got El Cap. This is absolute mecca for climbers. The big walls, this is the definition of a big wall. It's a 3,000-foot sheer granite wall. You got to be cut of the right cloth to do this kind of stuff, but the granite, because of the slow crystallization of it, has very large crystals and they're extremely strong. Should you possess the ability to hang by the last digit of your fingers, your entire body weight, you can grab a nubbin and in fact hang from there, and that is not going to break off. The granite will hold you easily. That's what these guys are doing here. At least they've got, like I say, you got to be cut of the right cloth to accept that challenge. I have no idea where he's finding handholds on this. It looks like a sheer face to me, but and oops is not a good word up there. Although he's got a rope on him, so maybe he would fall 40 feet down, 40 feet again, and have a whipper. But he's got a harness, so he's not going to fall to his death. There's the glacier cleaved face of Half Dome up on the other end of the park at the south rim. There's Full Dome and Half Dome. Each Half Dome is the symbol of the park. Each of the parks has one of their formations that they set up as the symbol. Half Dome. Last June, for the first time, I climbed up to the top of the north rim. I'm on North Dome, and you're looking straight across south at the face of Half Dome. So I thought that was kind of a nice photo op. Then there's Alex. Alex Honnold. If you've never seen the movie Free Solo, you might want to get that one. He's a unique individual. Regular laws of gravity and physics don't seem to apply to him. This day, he walked up with his chalk bag and his climbing shoes and decided to scale the sheer face of Half Dome, just going straight up. Didn't tell anybody, just not a big publicity stunt or anything, just walked over, and he got to rest on what he called, thank God, ledge. No assist, this is free soloing. Is if he slips, he falls 4,000 feet down. There are much easier ways to get to, an easier way to get to the top of Half Dome. I've been up there 3 times. The cables used to be pretty much open. You could go up there if you dared to. Nowadays, it's so popular. I think there's a lottery in February. You have to sign it. You have to know exactly what day you're going to be there in June and request a permit and stuff. It's just a numbers game. They have to limit access up there because it got too popular. There's the top of Half Dome, which is pretty fun. You sit there and you're looking west all the way down the valley. Gives you a very different perspective. The different features, the famous features in the valley. Like I say, don't skip the valley. You should. This is behind the Ahwahnee. The Royal Arches are there. That's North Dome up above it. That's what I climbed in June. Not up the face here. You can cheat. You can drive up Tioga Road and hike in essentially level because you drove up the vertical in your car and you just hike in from the woods and you end up on the top of North Dome. Bridal Veil brought the boys over to the base of it and got pounded on by the water pouring on us. They're just very memorable experiences. Ribbon Falls is just west of El Cap on the North Rim. 1,600-foot single drop, the longest single drop of any waterfall in North America. Cathedral spires, it's like I say, you can't take a bad picture. Anywhere you turn in the valley, you're going to get just remarkable. This is one of our wild and scenic rivers, protected rivers, so it won't be dammed at any point. The Merced. Camp Curry, right at the base of the South Rim. You have tents, relatively inexpensive way to stay there. You don't have to pay the Ahwahnee rates. Or lug your tent and sleeping bags and stuff. It's all, you set up shop, but it's not a petting zoo. And if you're staying in Curry Village, you have to go to they have a 20-minute bear orientation that you have to sit through to drill into your head that this is a bear-proof storage box that each one of them have. So you have to take all your food out of your coolers, you don't stick a Snickers under your pillow or something. They have very, very good smell and they'll find it. So you'll come out in the morning and there'll be bear poop in the path outside your cabin. They kind of let you know that you're in their area. Well, we parked our rental car next to this guy. This was a pickup truck that I noted the previous day, his license plate was number 4 UBEAR. He had done everything right. He took all the food out of his cooler and put it in the bear-proof storage and stuff. But he took the cooler and put it in the back of his pickup truck. It was empty. The bear didn't know that. He looks in the window and sees a cooler, and they know what's in a picnic basket. So right through the rear window, the bear went, and it happened to be 4U Bear was his license plate. So I thought that was kind of deserving. There's the Awani. A great bucket list, in my opinion, would be to go stay at all these magnificent lodges that were built. This was like 2015, it was built. If you have the timbers that they have in old growth forests, you can build places like this. Not today though. There's a quiet little breakfast nook. And there's my kids, and you can put 4-foot logs in the fireplace. And this is, it's just on a different scale of your normal lodge. The Mariposa Grove, there's so many treasures in Yosemite. It would take the whole hour to go through them all. The Mariposas, sequoias, the water, Hetchy was a valley. The Hetchy Valley, according to Muir, was as beautiful as Yosemite Valley. This O'Shaughnessy Dam actually put him in his grave. Poor Muir tried his damnedest to, sorry, bad use of that word, his darndest to stop the construction of this dam. It was in the borders of the protected national park. When the San Andreas went wild and they had the earthquake in 1906 and San Francisco, the gas lines were ruptured, everything caught fire. They didn't have water to put out the fires. The city burned for like a week. So that raised the hue and cry to get a more reliable source of water to San Francisco. The conservationists were kind of drowned out, and they built the dam to create a 117 billion gallon reservoir to not only furnish water to San Francisco, but also the growing, our breadbasket, the Central Valley. So it also drowned the Hetchy Valley, which is now under 300 feet of water. The Tioga Road, you start down at the El Portal entrance. It's at 6,000 feet. You go almost to 10,000 up at the east entrance, the Tioga Pass. You'll hear a lot about overcrowding in the national parks, completely dependent on what time of day you go. If you're gonna, yes, if you get on the tour in the valley and on the tour bus, you're gonna have company. We went in August. That point out there on the left had a family picnic and had Tenaya Lake. This was the backdrop to our family lunch. Never saw another person. This is right off the parking area. The sign is at the side of the road. Didn't take a lot to hike out there, but you just go where the people aren't. And there's such beautiful backgrounds. The high Sierra, the Tuolumne Meadows, you can hike up. This is Lambert Dome. I was up there in June. You can see forever. And that's looking out towards the Tuolumne Meadows. You can camp up there. You can bring tents. There's campgrounds, or you can, the sunsets in Yosemite. Muir called it the range of light. Depending on where, this is the setting sun in the west, shining straight up toward the eastern end on the face of Half Dome in the afternoon. Another Galen Roll, one of the top mountaineering climbers in North American history, he was. He was also an amazing nature photographer, not so coincidentally, because his climbing allowed him to get into positions to take images that normal people couldn't get to. He was the first one to discover this. This is an interesting, one single day a year, if all the conditions are right, if there's been enough snowpack, if it's melting and there's enough water that the flowing waterfall doesn't just trickle down the face of the rock, if it juts out over and falls clear of the rock, I think it's February 18th, one single day of the year, the setting suns, the rays of the sun light up the waterfall and make it look like it's flowing lava. He took this picture and he published it in one of his coffee table books. So now if you go up on the North Rim here on February 18th, you're going to have some company. There's tripods set up. Everybody's trying to get the same money shot. But he was the first one to see this one. That's a sunset shot. You can stay up in the lodge in the meadows. The ranger holds forth with all kinds of stories. It's a great place to camp. So sorry it took so long, but that's Yosemite. Lots to be seen there. Obviously one of my favorites. Kings Canyon. If you come down the Sierra Nevadas, Yosemite's up at the top end. They've glommed together two more conserved areas, the Ansel Adams Wilderness and the John Muir Wilderness. This is the Pacific Crest Trail that runs from Canada to Mexico. This section of it running through the parks is known as the John Muir Trail. It's also the Pacific Crest Trail. And that connects from Yosemite down into Kings Canyon and Sequoia. Kings Canyon, if you're ever on Jeopardy, started its life as General Grant National Park. It was called that for 50 years. It wasn't until 1940 that when it got expanded, they changed the name to Kings Canyon. And during World War II, just basically to save money, because it physically abuts the other national park, Sequoia, they dispensed with half of the administrative responsibilities and jointly co-managed the two parks as one. Wilderness, when it says it's designated wilderness, that means not only is there no asphalt roads to drive into, it means there's no visitor center, there's no ranger outpost, there's not even a hiking trail, no source of man whatsoever. It's complete wilderness. 97% of the two parks combined are complete wilderness. So you got the popular areas, the General Grant tree, our nation's Christmas tree. This was the tree that the original national park was named for. In Sequoia, there's a spur road that you can drive out if you've got high clearance and a four-wheel drive. You can get out there and climb up to the top of Lookout Peak. Gives you a heck of a view of the High Sierras. You're looking into Kings Canyon, carved by glaciers. To get there, there's one single road, the access road, which is a spectacular scenic road. It takes you hours to switch back down from 6,000 or 7,000 feet elevation down to the floor of the canyon. Zumwalt is at the end, the meadows, you leave your cars there, and the trailheads go forth from there. Cedar Grove Village has you can get your passport stamped. There's a visitor center there, but basically that's where you head off hiking to Mist Falls. That was the hike I did last June. You can see people down there on the rocks to give you some kind of scale of how high it is. Beautiful, beautiful day hike. To get up on the top, on the north end, the Pacific Crest Trail is 800 miles of trails in the parks, but very, very little used. You gotta want to be up there. It's a stretch. And again, the bears, not quite as much protection from them up there. No firearms allowed in any national park. So you get your little can of bear spray and hope that this guy got up on the right side of the den that morning. Talk about just jaw-dropping scenery. If somebody happens to have set up their tent on the lake that you're at, you just keep walking and half mile down, you'll find another one that you can have to yourself. I mean, it's just a series of these glacial tarns that have been carved out. That's your reward for expending the significant caloric burnup to get up there. That's what you get if you reserve a campsite. You do get a bear-proof storage unit. The open fires, you've heard of the California wildfires that are going on. If in fact drought conditions exist, you can't even have open fires in the fire pit. But you do get one hell of a sunset because all the Pacific stream, the jet stream coming across the Pacific hits the Sierras and takes good clouds to get a good sunset, and they all kind of coagulate, congeal around the, so virtually assured of great sunsets every night there. So that's the northern section. The southern section is Sequoia, separate national park, but like I say, physically adjacent. This was the second one. This one was Muir going to Washington. John Muir goes to Washington. The bloggers aren't, I don't know, at the risk of generalizing, don't seem to have an excess of gray matter. If you drop the first, all they see is board feet. When you see a sequoia, one sequoia, mature sequoia, represents about 300,000 board feet. Board foot is a foot by an inch thick. 300,000 board feet in one tree. So, okay, you're a logger, that's what you do, you cut trees. The wood is useless for building. It's very soft, it splinters. It's not, the northern redwoods almost got extincted because they're like maple. They're very hard grained and beautiful for floorboards or building with, not sequoias, not the giganta sequoia breed down here. But they didn't get it into their heads. Even after experimenting with it, they just wanted to cut boards and boards. So Muir was trying to stop the logging of it. He got it set up as a second to Yellowstone. It was our second national park. The biggest noteworthy point of Sequoia, other than the big trees, is the fact that if you come in from the Central Valley, the portal there by Three Rivers, you're at 1,700 feet elevation. And the eastern side of the park, Mount Whitney, is 14,000 feet, 14,500. You have over 13,000 feet of elevation change within the borders of this one park. So the different climate zones and different, as you go up, the vegetation changes. I've got 85 miles from Badwater Basin. On the east side is Death Valley. We'll get there eventually. You've got the highest point in the lower 48 at Mount Whitney. 85 miles away, Badwater Basin is 282 feet below sea level. It's the lowest point in North America. They're only 80 miles apart. Walk through the giant forests is, I'm sorry, you can look at all the pictures you want and it doesn't do justice. It's very, very difficult to capture in a still picture. Even a video panning up and down, it's just staggering. It's not like there's anything around here in New England you can point to and say, yeah, kids, it's like that or something. It isn't. It's just an otherworldly experience. The ranger that we were at, the General Sherman tree, used the little one. Galen is on holding my right hand there. He was in the 3rd grade, and the ranger, as a description, said it would take 27 3rd graders holding hands to get around the diameter, the base of the General Sherman tree. Galen turned to me and said, Dad, I only have 21 kids in my class. My entire class couldn't get around one tree. So it really stuck with him. It was a good read. The sequoias are incredible. The bark, you know, we have birch trees in New England. You make your little paper birch, thin bark, canoes out of them and stuff. The bark of a sequoia tree is, I didn't bring a yardstick, you know, a yard, that's 3 feet thick. That's how thick the bark is, the outer protective coating around the sequoia tree. They couldn't care less if the fire ravages at their base. They have such a layer of protection. It actually takes heat to propagate because the heat goes up the trunks of the trees, it gets into the upper parts. it makes the cones open up and the seeds drop. The fire burns away the competing undergrowth so the seedlings can take root. The ash from the fire covers them over so the sunlight doesn't destroy them. They need fires in order to grow. So the fires don't hurt these guys. The great trail, the Congress Trail, it starts with the President Tree, and they're all named. The Senate grouping here, and then over down the trail a little further, you've got the House. There is a drive-through tree up in the Mariposa Grove in Yosemite that's still vertical. They've carved it out and you can drive through. This one's a fallen sequoia that you can drive through. Morro Rock is another one of those balloons that came up from beneath, solid granite. The Park Service was formed in 1916. One of the first tasks was build me a wooden staircase to the top of Morro Rock. It's very exposed. So they did that. A few years later in the 30s with the Civilian Conservation Corps, granite is not an easy thing to carve. Their task was to carve into Morro Rock a stairway all the way up to the top, which is there today. You can get up top and there's railings up there to keep you from being blown off, but that's your view from the top of Morro Rock, which is, there's a parking lot right at the base of it. It's just climbing the stairs. If you hike out on the High Sierra Trail and look back, that's Morro Rock, the backside of it. Ferns and sequoias, beautiful, beautiful hiking scenery. Tharp was one of the early guys. Muir used to hike down from Yosemite to come visit him. He built into a fallen sequoia was his cabin. You can go visit it today. It's still there. They do have a cave. They have a lot of caves actually, right through the area. But and then this is one of those protect bat swinging gates to let people in. You can, or if the bats are sleeping or mating, you can close that and keep people out. But it's the only commercially accessible one. It's called Crystal Cave, one of 275 caves. The uniqueness here is that it's not limestone, it's marble. Geologically related very closely to limestone, but it's marble, so it's very, very smooth. And you know what marble is. All the formations are marble. To hike up to the high country, the access trail here through a series of switching back and climbing. This is the Valhalla Cliffs. To get up to the top is quite a day's hike. But again, you're rewarded with just airplane views of the High Sierras from on high. And you'll have it to yourself. That's from the top of Morro. That's our mountainous Sierra Nevada parks, Yosemite, Kings Canyon, and Sequoia. Now we've got two over on the east side. All the rain hits the mountains, and to get up and over, it dumps and makes the sequoias grow. But then on the east side, no rain. So we have Death Valley. It was a national monument early on, and actually with one signature in 1994, the California Desert Protection Act formed Joshua Tree National Park, Death Valley National Park, and in between them, a big chunk of land, Mojave National Preserve. It's actually easier to get to from Vegas. Vegas is 2 hours, it's 118 miles, 2-hour drive from Vegas to get to Death Valley. Very, very large park. On the map of California, it doesn't look like much, but Yellowstone is 2.5 million acres. This is bigger than that. This is the largest national park in the lower 48. It's 3.3 million acres. The red lines are the paved roads. There's only, they crisscross like an X. There's only a few of them there. It's more paved miles than any other national park, just because it's from northwest to southeast, it's 156 miles. So it's a big park. Obviously lots of attractions there. See, call it Death Valley for a reason. Badwater Basin, 282 feet below sea level. It's kind of funny, actually. If you turn around from where I took this picture, there's mountains behind you, and you can look up in the mountains, and there's somebody whitewashed a line up there. I asked the ranger, what the devil's up there? He said, that's sea level. Somebody noted 300 feet up from where you're standing. That's sea level. So it's basically the bed of an evaporated lake. Walking after 10, I got there at noon and soon found out that these signs are to be honored. You don't go very far. It's just an oven. It's very hot. So you're supposed to learn from your mistakes, right? I figured I'd get up early the next day, got up at 8:30 in the morning. It started from the visitor center furnace. They have a digital thermometer out there. 8:30 in the morning, it's already 115 degrees. I was talking about the ranger. I said, wow, you guys must twiddle your thumbs. No, nobody must come here. He said, couldn't be further from the truth. Europeans come like a magnet, like iron filings to magnet here. The highest temperatures ever recorded on Earth were here in, right there, 1913, 134 degrees. Everybody that comes to visit wants to say that they went to the hottest spot. They come and they go out, they have zero appreciation for heat stroke. The rangers end up dragging them in or carrying them back. They get in trouble, but they just keep coming. He says it's unbelievable how popular it is with Europeans to come here in July and August. Go in the fall, it's much more enjoyable. Some wag called this the devil's golf. Those are 2 foot tall, basically modules of crystallized salt. So you can imagine what a golf ball would look like in there. A lot of erosion, which opens up veins of different color minerals. So it's a very, very pretty park. Different sections. That is a gold. That's just a gold colored mineral in Golden Canyon, Zabriskie Point, same, all of those rivulets there were eroded out. This is just different minerals that get exposed. So it's kind of, it looks like somebody went around with food coloring and colored them. They're all different minerals. So Badwater Basin is down at the low point. You can drive up to, I didn't even get out of my car, drove all the way around up to here. You're 6,000 feet above, gives you a great view, the length of the valley. But you don't have to hike it, you can drive there. Borax works, bed of an evaporated sea. The sodium borate is good for cleansers. 40 mule team borax was a lot of people made a lot of money basically skimming off the top layer of the evaporated lake that was there. Ubehebe crater. You don't normally think volcanic craters in Death Valley, but there's a pretty good size one there. God knows what would prompt you to go for a bike ride in the desert in the summer. You got to carry some serious water with you if you're going to go do that. But going out to Titus Canyon's a good take, but I would strongly recommend you have a 4-wheel drive vehicle if you're going to go in there. I wanted to go see the racetrack Playa, and on the way there, I stopped. Somebody on their way out from camping took their tea kettle and just left it there, and it caught on. So other campers now, when they're leaving, they add their tea kettles to the sign. So it's now called Tea Kettle Junction. racetrack playa is very, very bizarre. Rocks don't move a lot. It's every 3 or 4 years they'll shift. The best the scientists can come up with is that when it doesn't rain very often, but when it does, the surface will be slick, it'll be muddy, and they say the wind moves these rocks. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have a better explanation, so I gotta go with theirs, but these are 700-pound rocks. You gotta have one hell of a wind to be pushing a 700, it's 1,500 feet, the track that this rock has moved on its own. It's kind of a very unique phenomenon. Again, there's a couple of oases that the cottonwoods can get their roots down low enough to tap into the water table. So it doesn't give you a lot of relief, but that's your campsite. Because of the heat, you're not going to see an abundance of critters. Wildlife sightings are scarce because most of them are nocturnal. They're out and about at nighttime. There's 51 different species of mammals, lots of reptiles, birds. So where you have coyotes, of course, you're going to have roadrunners. My favorite section of the park are the sand dunes. The mesquite sand dunes or the eroded grains of sand from the Sierra Nevadas that blow down. Absolutely phenomenal. They're loose grained, so there's no vegetation anchoring them. So they shift, the winds will change. You hike out there and turn around in 20 minutes and your footprints are gone. It's been erased. So if solitude is your thing, this is the place for you. Not a lot of people go out there. You can have it to yourself and you just sit in one place. And as the sun changes, the shadows shift, the different faces of the dunes are lit up. It's absolutely beautiful. Or you can go back up to Dante's Point for sunset. Zabriskie. Again, the clouds coming over from the Sierra Nevadas. Great sunset pictures. Or just stay there out in the middle during the night and have the constellations to yourself. The glow in the distance is the Strip in Vegas. Reckoning. And the preserve preserves a section of the old Route 66. Different rules for National Preserve than there are for National Park. That's the Bureau of Land Management administers to the Mojave National Preserve. You can go four-wheeling out there. You can do other activities in a preserve that you can hunt, actually, that you can do in a national park. So the last of our parks on today's tour is Joshua Tree. Great place to bring kids. Joshua Tree is due east of Los Angeles. Route 10 goes straight over. And again, on the California map, it doesn't look like much. Joshua Tree is larger than the entire state of Rhode Island. It's huge. What happened was in the 20s and early 30s, the urban Los Angeles people got into, there's not a lot of water there. They don't have green lawns. So they started getting into desert landscaping around their homes. Well, it got into vogue to have Joshua trees included in your landscaping. They were going out on weekends and the only place you find Joshua trees is in Joshua Tree National Park. They were digging them up and poaching them basically, but they weren't conserved at the time. So initially the National Monument was created so that the government could post rangers there to stop the raping of the Joshua trees. And then, as I mentioned before, in '94, it was one of the parks that got elevated to national park status in 1994. It's essentially two different parks. That road 195 there that splits the park down the middle. If you start off of Route 10, you're at low elevation and the road climbs up to higher elevation. On the right, the eastern half of the park is under 3,000 feet. That's the north, it says northeast. It's actually the northwestern corner of the Sonoran Desert, which is down in Arizona, the Saguaro. The Sonoran Desert comes up this far to Joshua Tree. The Mojave Desert, the western half, is over 3,000 feet. Very, very different wet climate, wet as deserts go, it's wet, but very different than the lower half. So it's two different parts. My personal opinion, don't bother with the eastern half. The teddy bear cactus are evil. It says this cactus is hazardous. They warn you about it. I swear to God, the things will jump off of the, if you lose your golf ball over there, don't go try to get it. It's not worth it. I don't know why you would want to go ride a mountain bike near these things. I mean, they just, I don't know, the trails there are more hazardous. Go up to the other half, go up to the northern half. Joshua Tree. If you're the first ones in an area, you get to name stuff. The Mormons were the first ones that moved out here. They thought the raised arms of the Joshua tree reminded them of the supplicant Joshua, so they named it. It's actually not a tree. It's a member of the lily family, so it has fruit. But they call it Joshua trees. This is, and again, you want to see them, you come here. They're not found anywhere else in the world. It is, for desert trees, or it's not a tree, desert plants, they do grow 30, 40 feet tall, but they're kind of wimpy in terms of the root system is extremely shallow. There's no strong taproot or anything. So a good windstorm, down go the Joshua trees, which is why they were so easily transplanted. You don't have to dig up very much to take the ball of a Joshua tree. Campsites are just a place to lie your head. You come here to play. This is a place that Fred Flintstone would have designed. It is so fun. It's all eminently climbable. The Monzo Granite, it's the southern end of that Sierra Nevada batholith. So you've got old rocks exposed. The texture on this, though, some of them are smooth, some of them you don't want to kneel on with bare skin because it's just extremely rough texture. This is another mecca for climbers, not the same as Yosemite as far as big wall climbing. This, you can spend a day being very, very exerted climbing and never get 25 feet off the ground. It's all bouldering, but you practice your techniques and stuff. There's just endless. They have, these are crash pads down there in case his fingers get a little tired. It's a ball. You can climb anywhere. And it's a challenge to go up the face of a smooth boulder to get to the top. So it's difficult climbing, but it's not huge scale. More mapped climbing routes than any national park in the entire system. There's over 8,000 named routes to climb just in Joshua Tree. You don't need roping, but you can practice your techniques and so look at the jumble of rocks. I mean, you can see bringing 7th graders, 10th graders here and turning them loose and saying, go for it. You know, none of them are technical. They're just scrambling. They're just boulders everywhere. It's a lot of fun. And again, the photo ops. I didn't even have lens camera, fixed camera. These are from a cell phone, Skull Rock. You can get very creative with the photo ops that the rock formations present. You can get crazy, and you can just stay in one place. This is late in the afternoon, early sunset as the sun's going down. You can go up high to get the sunset, or that same image. Once the sun goes down, then it backlights the clouds, and that's the same face here. A little later on, the whole sky lights up. Fun place. But just because the sun's down doesn't mean that's the end of your day. The climbers come here and they want their money's worth. So they basically turn on their headlights on the vehicles because the boulders are right beside your tent where you drove up to. So they continue to climb. Very, very fun park to go adventuring. So that's our trip down the Southern California parks. Very, very different. Lots of more rocks coming in 2 weeks, but we're going to be out in Colorado, Utah. The Colorado Plateau in Utah has the Red Rock area. We'll go over to Mesa Verde and end up in the Grand Canyon. So if you like the parks, come on back in 2 weeks and we'll have a different set to visit.